The house stood at the edge of a quiet suburb in Manchester, wrapped in morning mist and the illusion of peace. Inside, Emily Carter believed she had finally found her place in life. She had married Daniel Wright 3 years ago, a calm, soft-spoken man who loved her in a way that felt safe, or so she thought. But what Emily didn't marry into was just Daniel. She married into his family, and that was where everything began to rot. The smile that didn't reach the eyes. From the first day Emily met her in-laws, something felt off. His mother, Margaret Wright, hugged her tightly and said, "Finally, someone to take care of my son properly." His sister, Chloe Wright, smiled too brightly. "Welcome to the family. We're very close." The word close lingered longer than it should have. Too close. The house that was never hers. After the wedding, Daniel suggested something temporary. "Let's live with my parents for a while. Just until we save enough for our own place." Emily agreed. It sounded reasonable, but temporary turned into months, then years, and the house she thought she was living in as a guest slowly became a place where she was treated like one. Or worse, like she didn't belong at all. Invisible lines. It started small. Her meals were forgotten. Her clothes were accidentally moved. Her opinions at dinner vanished into silence. And every time she complained to Daniel, he would sigh. "You're overthinking. They're just old-fashioned." Old-fashioned. That word became a shield for everything cruel. The locked room. One afternoon, Emily came home early and found a door in the hallway locked. It hadn't been locked before. When she asked Margaret about it, the woman smiled. "Oh, that. Just storage." But Emily heard voices behind it one night. Low conversations. Paper shuffling. And her name. Always her name. The paper that changed everything. The betrayal didn't come with shouting. It came with paperwork. One evening, Daniel placed documents on the table. "We need to sign these," he said casually. Emily glanced at them. Her heart stopped. Her name was missing from everything. Bank accounts. Property agreements. Even the house she thought they were building together was already transferred to Margaret Wright. Emily looked up slowly. "What is this?" Daniel avoided her eyes. "It's just family planning." But Margaret spoke next, calm and sharp. "Sweetheart, you were never meant to own anything here. You're just my son's wife." Just. The betrayal unfolds. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She walked into the kitchen at 2 a.m. Froze. Chloe was sitting at the table with Daniel. And the locked room was open. Inside were boxes. Emily's boxes. Her documents. Her savings. Her life. "All sorted," Chloe said lightly. "It was easier than expected." Emily's voice shook. "You went through my things." Margaret appeared behind her. "We protected our family assets," she corrected. Emily turned to Daniel, desperate. "You let them do this?" Silence. That silence was the answer. They thought she was gone. Until she came back for everything. The exit plan that was already decided. Emily didn't know it then, but she was already being erased. Her job emails were redirected. Her bank alerts stopped. Even her relatives were told she had moved abroad with her husband, a life disappearing while she was still standing in it. And the cruelest part? She was the only one not invited to the decision. The breaking point. The final betrayal came on a rainy evening. Emily returned home to find her suitcase packed neatly by the door. Margaret stood beside it. "You'll be staying elsewhere from tonight," she said calmly. Emily laughed in disbelief. "Elsewhere? This is my home." Chloe stepped forward. "No, Emily, it never was." Daniel finally spoke, voice low. "Just go. Please, it's easier this way." Easier. For them. The truth behind the family. Emily left that night. Rain soaking through her coat, she walked until her legs gave out. Later, she discovered the truth piece by piece. The house had been in Margaret's name long before the marriage. Daniel had debts he never confessed. They needed a safe spouse to stabilize finances. And Emily had been chosen quietly, from the start. Not for love, but for convenience. Ending the woman who didn't break. Months later, Emily rebuilt her life in a small apartment across town. No in-laws. No pretending. Just silence that didn't hurt anymore. One evening she received a letter. No apology. Just a line from Daniel. "We didn't mean for it to go this far." Emily read it once, then folded it carefully, and threw it away. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy you. It wakes you up. 3 months after Emily Carter disappeared from the Wright family's life, silence settled over the house like dust. But it wasn't peace. It was comfort, the kind of comfort people feel right before something they buried starts breathing again. The name they tried to erase. At first, Margaret Wright stopped mentioning Emily entirely. Daniel followed suit. Even Chloe laughed once and said she didn't fit anyway. But strange things began happening. Emails arrived addressed to Emily Carter Wright. Bank alerts resurfaced. And one morning, a letter came from a law firm neither Daniel nor his mother had ever heard of. The return address, Carter Legal Group. Margaret frowned. That name doesn't sound familiar, but it should have, because Emily Carter had stopped being the woman they discarded. She had become someone else entirely, the woman they didn't recognize. Across town, Emily sat in a glass office overlooking Manchester's financial district. Her hair was shorter now, her voice calmer, her eyes sharper. On the wall behind her hung a new title, Senior Legal Consultant, Estate and Corporate Recovery Division. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was studying, learning, preparing, and waiting. The first move, the paper trail. Emily didn't rush revenge. She built it, quietly, patiently. She traced everything. The house transfer, the forged financial authorizations, the hidden accounts Daniel never disclosed, the illegal signing under emotional coercion, and worst of all, the manipulation that made her legally invisible inside her own marriage. Every document told the same story. They didn't just betray her, they structured it. The knock that changed everything. One evening, Daniel opened the door and froze. Emily stood there, not trembling, not pleading, just holding a folder. Behind her stood a legal assistant and a court officer. Daniel blinked. Emily? She smiled faintly. I prefer Miss Carter now. Margaret appeared behind him. What is this nonsense? Emily didn't look at her. She placed the folder on the table. This is a notice of asset recovery, fraud investigation and unlawful property transfer. Silence fell instantly. Even the air seemed to stop. The second move, the house that was never theirs. Emily turned a page. The house you're living in was acquired, using funds traced to my personal savings account. Redirected without consent. Chloe scoffed nervously. That's impossible. Emily finally looked at her. No, what's impossible is thinking I wouldn't check. A pause. Then the second blow. I also found the signatures you forged. Margaret's face tightened. You have no proof. Emily slid another document forward. Oh, I do. Stamped. Verified. Corretti. The collapse begins. Within days, everything started unraveling. The bank froze accounts. Lawyers arrived. Investigations opened. The house they once stood in like royalty became a legal battleground. And Daniel, quiet, passive Daniel, finally cracked. You're destroying us, he whispered when he met Emily outside court. Emily tilted her head. No. A pause. You destroyed me first. I'm just correcting the balance. The truth that broke them. The Wright family's biggest mistake wasn't betrayal. It was underestimating her silence. Because while they laughed, Emily had been documenting everything. While they erased her, she had been rebuilding herself into the one thing they never expected. A problem they couldn't control. The final hearing. The courtroom was cold. Too formal for emotions. Margaret sat stiffly. Chloe avoided eye contact. Daniel looked hollow. And Emily? She looked like the version of herself they should have feared from the beginning. The judge spoke. Evidence shows clear financial manipulation, identity misrepresentation, and unlawful property acquisition. A pause. Then the verdict. All assets frozen pending restitution. Property returned to original claimant. Legal proceedings against the Wright family approved. Margaret gasped. Chloe whispered. No. Daniel said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. The woman who reclaimed herself. Outside the courthouse, rain began to fall again. But this time, Emily didn't walk away broken. She walked away free. Chloe ran after her once. Was it worth it? She shouted. Emily stopped. For a moment she didn't answer. Then she said softly, You didn't just take my home. She turned slightly. You tried to take my name. And she walked away without looking back. Final flick. Justice isn't always loud. Months later, the house was sold. Debts were exposed. Daniel left the city quietly. Margaret stopped attending public gatherings. And Emily? She kept building. Not revenge, not bitterness, but something far more dangerous to people like the Wrights. A life they could never touch again. They thought it was over. Until the Wright family struck back. Part 3. For 6 months after the court ruling, Emily Carter finally experienced something she had almost forgotten how to recognize. Peace. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that doesn't ask permission to exist. Her mornings were slow now. Coffee, sunlight through glass windows, work she actually chose. No manipulation, no hidden agendas, no constant walking on eggshells. But peace, she would later learn, is the one thing people like the Wright family refuse to let you keep. The first crack in the calm. It started with a rumor. A small article buried online. Legal consultant accused of fabricating family fraud case. Emily read it once, then again. The words weren't just misleading. They were intentional. Her name twisted. Her story rewritten. And at the bottom, a familiar signature. Margaret Wright. The family that refused to stay down. The Wright family had not accepted defeat. They had simply regrouped. Margaret had hired a private PR consultant. Chloe had reactivated old contacts in the banking sector. And Daniel had started talking again, not to Emily, but about her. She manipulated everything. He told someone in a recorded call that would later surface. She planned it from the start. I was the victim too. A victim. That word landed like poison, because Emily remembered the truth. He wasn't dragged into it. He signed it. The second strike, reputation war. Within weeks, things escalated. Anonymous emails were sent to Emily's workplace. Questions were raised about her qualifications. A complaint was filed accusing her of ethical misconduct in legal consultancy. Her supervisor called her into a meeting. Just tell me what's going on, he said carefully. Emily placed a folder on the table. Inside, court rulings, verified bank fraud documentation, recorded communications from Daniel, and Margaret's signed admission during initial investigation. She looked up calmly. This is what's going on. The attempted silencing. But the Wright family wasn't finished. One evening, Emily received a message from an unknown number. You took everything from us. We will return the favor. The next day, her apartment lock had been tampered with. A warning. Not subtle anymore, direct. But Emily didn't panic. She simply called someone she hadn't needed in months. Secure everything, she said. They've escalated. On the other end, they again? Emily paused. Yes. Then she added quietly, now it ends. The third move, turning the mirror. What the Wright family didn't realize was simple. Emily wasn't alone anymore. Her case had drawn attention legal observers, corporate investigators, and media watchdog groups interested in financial abuse patterns. And once the full file was reopened, the story stopped being about revenge. It became about exposure. The interview that changed everything. A televised segment aired unexpectedly. A journalist sat across from Emily. People are saying you destroyed a family, she said carefully. Emily didn't flinch. I didn't destroy them, she replied. I documented what they did. The journalist hesitated. Do you hate them? That question hung in the air. Emily leaned slightly forward. Hate would imply I still belong in their story. A pause. I don't. The collapse of the Wright narrative. Within days of the interview, the PR firm dropped Margaret's case. Chloe was questioned over financial irregularities. Daniel lost his job after internal compliance reviews reopened, and the bank officially flagged the Wright family accounts for long-term fraud risk. The story they tried to build collapsed under its own weight, because lies don't survive exposure, they survive silence. And Emily was no longer silent. The final confrontation. It happened outside the courthouse again. Familiar ground, but this time, the balance had shifted. Margaret stood waiting. No lawyers. No confidence. Just exhaustion. You didn't have to ruin us, she said quietly. Emily looked at her for a long moment, then answered. I didn't ruin you. A pause. You did that the day you thought I had no voice worth hearing. Margaret's eyes tightened. You think you've won. Emily glanced toward the building behind them. I don't think about winning. Then she turned. I think about leaving things exactly where they belong. And she walked past her, without stopping. What the Wrights never understood. Months later, the Wright family faded from public record disputes. Their financial influence dissolved quietly. Daniel left the country entirely. Margaret stopped speaking publicly. Chloe disappeared from professional circles. But Emily Carter didn't celebrate. She didn't need to, because she had already learned the final truth. Revenge is loud, but freedom is silent, and silence is permanent. They thought she was done with them, until the Wright family made one last move. 2 years had passed since Emily Carter last heard the name Wright spoken in her daily life. 2 years of silence, not the kind forced on her before, but the kind she chose. Her career had grown beyond anything Margaret Wright once believed she was capable of. Her name now appeared on corporate recovery cases across Europe. Her work was referenced in legal seminars. Her past, once weaponized against her, had become case material for protecting. And yet, some stories don't end just because you stopped reading them. They wait. The letter that shouldn't exist. It arrived on a Tuesday. No return address, no stamp of urgency, just her name written in handwriting she recognized instantly. Daniel Wright. Emily stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Inside was only one page. I didn't know how to fix what I helped destroy, but I need you to know something. It wasn't just them. There's something you were never told. Below it. A meeting location, a time, and a warning. Come alone. If you still want the full truth. The truth they buried deeper. Emily didn't go immediately. She checked everything first, and that was when she found it. A sealed financial audit buried under a discontinued court file. One name repeated throughout the hidden transactions. Wright and Associates Holdings. Not Margaret, not Daniel. A third entity, one that had never appeared in her original case. Something larger, older, more organized, and still active. The meeting, the location was an old conference hall outside the city, half abandoned, half still functioning. Emily arrived exactly on time. Daniel was already there. He looked thinner, tired in a way that no courtroom ruling had ever caused. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said quietly, "They never told you the full structure." Emily didn't sit. "Start talking." "The family beneath the family." Daniel exhaled slowly. "My mother didn't build everything," he admitted. "She inherited it." Emily's eyes narrowed slightly. "Inherited what?" Daniel looked away. "A network, properties, financial shells, offshore trusts. The Wright name isn't just a family. It's a system." A pause. "And you were selected to stabilize one branch that was collapsing." Emily's voice dropped. "So I was never random." Daniel shook his head. "No, you were chosen." The second shock. The real reason she was targeted. Emily finally sat down. Daniel continued. "There was debt. Serious debt. If I married someone with clean financial standing, the structure could be reset without scrutiny." His voice cracked slightly. "You were the reset." Silence. Not anger yet, just calculation. Emily spoke slowly. "So your family didn't just betray me. They built the situation around me." Daniel nodded once. "Yes." The part that changed everything. Emily opened the file Daniel had brought. Inside were names, connections, transfers spanning years, and one recurring directive: maintain external spouse integration for asset stabilization. She looked up. "You were all doing this before me." Daniel didn't deny it. "Yes." Then softer. "But I think you were supposed to accept it quietly." A pause. "You didn't." The final attempt. The Wright system reacts. That night, Emily's office system was breached. Not randomly, precisely. Her archived case files were accessed. Her legal notes duplicated. Someone was trying to reconstruct her entire strategy. But they made one mistake. They assumed she still worked alone. The counter-move. The next morning, Emily didn't panic. She activated something she had quietly built over the past year. A sealed legal counter-network, designed specifically for financial coercion cases. Her message to the team was short. "They've escalated. Open Protocol 7. And just like that, every hidden Wright structure connected to her old case was flagged. Simultaneously across multiple jurisdictions. For the first time, the system they relied on began to see itself. The collapse of the hidden empire. Within weeks, offshore accounts were frozen across 3 countries. Right-linked shell companies were audited simultaneously. Historical financial abuse cases were reopened, and Daniel's confession file triggered a full institutional review. Margaret tried to deny everything, but denial doesn't survive documentation. Chloe attempted to disappear again, but her financial fingerprints were already mapped. And Daniel? He stopped running. Final confrontation. Emily met Daniel one last time. Same city, different weight in the air. He didn't look for forgiveness anymore. Only understanding. You could have taken everything from us, he said quietly. Emily shook her head. I didn't take anything. A pause. I just stopped protecting it. Daniel nodded slowly, then asked, was any of it real? At the beginning? Emily looked at him for a long time, then answered honestly, yes. A softer pause. Until you made it strategic. What survives after revenge? Months later, the right financial structure was dismantled under regulatory enforcement. Several executives linked to the network resigned under investigation. Margaret left the country quietly. Chloe's public presence vanished completely. Daniel entered a witness protection-style settlement arrangement. But Emily didn't call it justice. She didn't call it revenge either. When asked in an interview months later what she felt after everything, she paused before answering. I used to think betrayal was the end of a story. Another pause. It wasn't. It was just the part where you finally learn who you are without them. Final line. The Wright family tried to strike back, but what they didn't understand was that Emily Carter was never fighting to destroy them. She was fighting to make sure they could never define her again. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered.